When you think of the biggest drug empires in history, the names that come up are usually men: Escobar, El Chapo, Whitey Bulger. But behind some of the most ruthless criminal networks ever built, and some of them did it all while the world assumed a man was in charge. So, here are the most dangerous female gang leaders and their reactions to sentencing. Griselda Blanco.
Mother of cocaine. She is Griselda Blanco, a 69-year-old mother of four, seen here in one of her many.
Back in the 1970s, the cocaine trade in Miami was just getting started, and Griselda Blanco was right at the center of it. She had come up from Medellin, Colombia, and by the time she settled in South Florida, she was already ruthless. Her operation was bringing in an estimated $80 million a month at its peak. Colombian officials believe she was behind as many as 250 murders in Colombia alone, with US investigators tying her to roughly 40 more in America. She invented the motorcycle assassination tactic, a method that cartels still use to this day. But what really put her in the headlines was the brutality of her orders. In 1982, she ordered the assassination of a rival, and during the hit, a 2-year-old boy named Johnny Castro was accidentally killed. The DEA finally caught up with her in February 1985 inches, Irvine, California. She was convicted on federal drug conspiracy charges and sentenced to 15 years in prison. But while she was serving that sentence, Miami prosecutors came after her for 3 murders, including the death of that little boy. The case had problems, though. Her star witness, a hitman named Jorge Ayala, got caught having phone sex with secretaries from the state attorney's office, and the whole thing collapsed. So, in 1998, Blanco pleaded guilty to 3 counts of second-degree murder and received 20 years, served concurrently. She was released in 2004 and deported back to Colombia. And then, on the 3rd of September 2012, at the age of 69, she was gunned down outside a butcher shop in Medellin by 2 men on a motorcycle. The very method she had invented was the one that took her out. Enedina Arellano Felix. Most cartel bosses get into the business through violence. Enedina Arellano Felix got in through a university degree. She studied accounting at the University of Guadalajara, and for years, her role in the Tijuana cartel was purely financial. She handled money laundering, set up front businesses like pharmacies and real estate ventures, and kept the books while her brothers ran the street operations. But her brothers kept falling. Ramon was killed in a shootout with Sinaloa cartel operatives in February 2002. Benjamin was arrested just a month later. Francisco Rafael was murdered by a man dressed as a clown in 2013, and Eduardo, the last brother standing, was captured in 2008, so Enedina stepped up. She became the first woman to lead a major Mexican drug cartel, and she did it her own way. While her brothers had waged bloody turf wars, Enedina focused on alliances and profits. She kept operations quiet, shifted the cartel's focus toward money laundering through legitimate businesses, and avoided the kind of attention that had gotten her brothers caught or killed. Her nickname, La Jefa, means the boss, and by all accounts, she earned it. Former DEA head of international operations Mike Vigil described her as someone who was not interested in the wars of her brothers, but was entirely focused on making alliances and making money. To this day, Enedina Arellano Felix has never been arrested. She has never been formally charged. She remains a fugitive. And while the Tijuana cartel is nowhere near as powerful as it once was, the fact that she is still out there, decades after her brothers were taken down, says something about how she ran things. Claudia Ochoa Felix.
Como todos esos medios que me informaron y dañaron a mis hijos, a mi familia y a mí más grande.
She had over 200,000 followers on social media. Her Instagram was full of luxury cars, designer bags, and staged photos with gold-plated AK-47s. The press called her the Kim Kardashian of organized crime, and Mexican tabloids claimed she was running Los Antrax, the Sinaloa cartel's elite enforcement and assassination squad. Claudia Ochoa Felix was born in Culiacan, Sinaloa, in 1987, and she was linked romantically to Jose Rodrigo Arechiga Gamboa, the man who actually led Los Antrax before his arrest in 2014. After he went down, rumor had it that she took over, but she always denied any involvement in organized crime, and law enforcement never produced any formal charges or confirmed leadership role. What she did have was visibility. In a world where most cartel figures try to stay invisible, Claudia put herself front and center, and that made her either incredibly bold or incredibly reckless. On the 14th of September 2019, she was found dead in a residence in Culiacan. She had been at a nightclub the night before, and the man she was with called authorities the next morning to report she was not breathing. The prosecutor said she died of suffocation, and alcohol and other substances were found in her body. Officials ruled her death was related to substance use, not cartel violence. She was 32 years old. She was never formally charged with any crime, and no conviction ever tied her to the Sinaloa cartel. But her name became synonymous with the narco lifestyle she broadcast online, and the suspicious circumstances of her death left more questions than answers. Cheng Chui-ping.
1 year ago, snakehead Cheng Chui-ping smuggled nearly 300 starving immigrants into New York from China.
For almost 2 decades, a woman running a small restaurant on East Broadway in Manhattan's Chinatown was quietly operating the largest human smuggling network in the world. Her name was Cheng Chui-ping, but everyone called her Sister Ping. Born in Fujian Province, China, in 1949, she came to the United States in 1981. By 1984, she had started moving people, smuggling Chinese immigrants into the country through elaborate routes that stretched across Central America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. She charged up to $40,000 per person, and over the years, her operation brought in more than $40 million. But the conditions were horrific. Immigrants were packed into cargo ships, held below deck for weeks, sometimes months. And Sister Ping used violent gang members from the Fuk Ching gang to collect debts and ransom payments from the families of those she smuggled in. The most devastating incident tied to her network was the Golden Venture disaster in 1993, when a cargo ship ran aground off Queens, New York. 10 people drowned trying to swim to shore. Prosecutors later connected Sister Ping to the voyage. She was finally arrested in Hong Kong in 2000 and extradited to the United States. In June 2005, a federal jury in Manhattan convicted her of conspiracy, money laundering, and trafficking in ransom proceeds. The judge gave her the maximum sentence allowed by law, 35 years. During sentencing, she pleaded for over an hour, insisting she was just a hard-working immigrant. The judge called her claims simply incredible and rejected them entirely. She died in federal custody at the age of 65 on the 24th of April 2014 at the Federal Medical Center in Carswell, Texas. Mallory Chacon Rossell. The U.S. Treasury Department once called her the most active money launderer in Guatemala, and honestly, that might have been an understatement. Mallory Chacon Rossell, known in the Guatemalan press as La Reina del Sur, the Queen of the South, ran a drug trafficking and money laundering empire that stretched from Guatemala through Honduras and Panama and fed directly into Mexico's most powerful cartels. Her organization supplied thousands of kilograms of cocaine per month to both Los Zetas and the Sinaloa cartel, and while the volume of drugs was staggering, it was the money side that really set her apart. At its peak, her network was laundering tens of millions of US dollars every month. In 2012, the US Treasury placed her on their Kingpin Act blacklist, which froze any assets she had connected to the American financial system. Her daughter and several business associates were also sanctioned. In September 2014, Chacon surrendered to US authorities. She pleaded guilty in December of that year to conspiring to smuggle cocaine into the United States, and in May 2015, she was sentenced in a sealed hearing before a federal judge in Miami. Everything about the case, the trial, the conviction, the length of her sentence, was put under seal for 5 years because of the sensitivity of her cooperation. Prosecutors had recommended a sentence in the low range of 10 years to life, and later reports revealed she originally received 12 years. But due to what was described as extraordinary cooperation, her sentence was eventually reduced to 5 years. She entered the courtroom that day, smiling, handcuffed, in a beige prison jumpsuit. Sandra Avila Beltran. Sandra Avila Beltran grew up in the bloodline of Mexican drug royalty. Her uncle was Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, the man they called the Godfather, who founded the Guadalajara cartel in the 1980s. She was also related to Rafael Caro Quintero. So from the very beginning, Sandra was surrounded by power, and she knew how to use it. For over a decade, she operated as a key link between Mexico's Sinaloa cartel and Colombia's Norte del Valle cartel, helping coordinate massive cocaine shipments. The press nicknamed her La Reina del Pacifico, the Queen of the Pacific, and her glamorous lifestyle turned her into a cultural figure. A best-selling novel and a popular ballad by Los Tigres del Norte were inspired by her story. She was arrested on the 28th of September 2007 in a Mexico City restaurant. The moment was broadcast on national television, and she smiled for the cameras as she was led away. Initially, she was charged with organized crime and drug trafficking, but Mexican courts acquitted her of the organized crime charge. In August 2012, she was extradited to the United States to face cocaine smuggling charges in Florida. Prosecutors accused her of helping her former boyfriend, Colombian drug lord Juan Diego Espinosa Ramirez, evade prosecution. She eventually cut a deal and pleaded guilty to being an accessory after the fact. In July 2013, a federal judge sentenced her to 70 months, but since she had already served nearly 6 years between Mexican and American custody, she had essentially completed her time. She was deported back to Mexico, where she faced a separate money laundering conviction and a 5-year sentence, though a judge later threw that out on double jeopardy grounds. She walked free in February 2015. Rosetta Cutolo. While her brother Raffaele sat in prison directing the Nuova Camorra Organizzata from behind bars, Rosetta Cutolo was the one actually running things on the outside. And she did it from a 16th-century palace in Ottaviano, complete with a tennis court and a swimming pool. Born in 1,937 inches Ottaviano, near Naples, Rosetta was brilliant with numbers. She negotiated directly with South American cocaine suppliers, managed the NCO's finances, and even sat in on high-level meetings between Camorra clans and Sicilian mafia representatives, trying to broker peace during the bloody clan wars of the early 1980s. She also nearly blew up a police headquarters. That plan fell through, but it gives you a sense of how far she was willing to go. In October 1981, Italian police raided her stronghold while she was presiding over a meeting of the NCO. She managed to escape hidden under a rug in a car, driven past police checkpoints by the neighborhood priest. And then she vanished. For over a decade, she directed operations from a series of safe houses across Italy. In 1990, she was tried and convicted in absentia on charges of mafia association and sentenced to 9 years, later reduced to 5. Then in February 1993, police tracked down her hideout. Instead of running, Rosetta walked out calmly and told the officers she was tired of being a fugitive. She served her remaining sentence and spent the rest of her life in Ottaviano. She passed away on the 14th of October 2023 at the age of 86, having outlived nearly every major figure from the NCO's era. Her story was dramatized in the 1986 film Il Camerista. Maria Licciardi. They called her La Madrina, the godmother, and also La Piccolina, the little one, because of her small stature. But there was nothing small about the power Maria Licciardi held over Naples. She took over the Licciardi clan after her brother Gennaro died in prison in 1994. At that point, the clan was in disarray, and rival groups were circling. So Maria pulled together a fragile coalition of 20 separate Camorra clans and forged what became known as the Secondigliano Alliance, which went on to dominate the northern and central areas of Naples. Under her leadership, the alliance controlled everything from drug trafficking and cigarette smuggling to extortion and prostitution. She also expanded the local drug market significantly. But control came at a price, and a bloody turf war with rival clans left bodies piling up across the city, with murders happening on an almost daily basis during the worst stretches. In 2001, she was placed on Italy's list of the top 30 most wanted fugitives. Police caught up with her that same year when she was stopped in a car near Naples. She was convicted and served 8 years before being released in 2009. But the story did not end there. In August 2021, at the age of 70, she was arrested again, this time at Rome's Ciampino airport, while trying to board a flight to Spain to visit her daughter. According to the Italian news agency ANSA, she did not react at all when officers served the warrant. She was completely still. In March 2023, she was found guilty of leading the clan and sentenced to 12 years and 8 months. Judith Moran. Melbourne's Gangland War was one of the bloodiest in Australian criminal history. Between 1998 and 2006, over 24 people were killed in a cycle of revenge and power grabs that tore through the city's underworld. And Judith Moran was right in the middle of it, watching her family get picked off one by one. Judy, as she was known, was the matriarch of the Moran family. Her first husband, Leslie John Cole, was shot dead in Sydney in 1982 during a gangland conflict. Her de facto husband, Louis Moran, was gunned down in a bar in March 2004. Her son Mark was shot dead outside his home in 2000, and her son Jason was killed at a children's football clinic in 2003. By 2009, most of the family was gone. But Desmond Moran, Louis's brother, was still alive, and Judy wanted him dead. On the 15th of June 2009, Desmond was shot and killed outside his home in Ascot Vale. The very next day, police arrested Judy and 3 others. She had been under surveillance, and investigators caught her walking back to her home after concealing the getaway car in her garage. Inside her house, they found a hidden safe with 3 handguns, stolen license plates, a wig, and clothing that matched witness descriptions of what the shooters wore. On the 9th of March 2011, a jury found Judy Moran guilty of murdering Desmond Moran. When the verdict was read, she collapsed in the dock. She was sentenced on the 10th of August 2011 to 26 years in prison with a minimum of 21 years before she would be eligible for parole. Maria Chata Leon. Drew Street in the Glassell Park neighborhood of northeast Los Angeles was one of the most dangerous blocks in the entire city. And the reason for that, for years, was one woman. Maria Chata Leon was the matriarch of the Drew Street clique of the Avenues gang, and she had turned her densely packed neighborhood into a criminal compound. She had come to the US from a small village in Mexico and over time built an operation that ran drugs, guns, and extortion out of a heavily fortified house. Inside, police would later find surveillance cameras, a shrine to Jesus Malverde, the patron saint of narco-traffickers, and a weapons cache that included a Tech-9, a rifle, explosive devices, and a taser gun. Her 13 children, at least half a dozen of whom became criminals, formed the backbone of the operation. Working under the direction of the Mexican mafia, the family ran crack cocaine and methamphetamine through the neighborhood while terrorizing residents into silence. She had been deported twice before. At one point, she was smuggled back into the country by a human trafficking ring that had ties to her own gang. In June 2008, police and over 500 federal agents swept the neighborhood and arrested 28 alleged members of the Drew Street clique under a federal racketeering indictment that named 70 defendants. Leon's home was later demolished by court order, and a community garden was planted where it once stood. Leon pleaded guilty to 2 counts of racketeering and conspiracy to distribute crack cocaine. At sentencing, she asked the judge for forgiveness. The judge told her that her culpability was very great and sentenced her to 8 years in federal prison. Raffaella Dalterio.
Lei a tenere le redini del clan da quando suo marito, il boss Nicola Pianese, era stato trucidato dal clan rivale.
In Naples, when a boss falls, someone has to step up. And when Nicola Pianese was murdered in 2006, his wife Raffaella Dalterio did exactly that. She took control of the Pianese Dalterio clan, one of the Camorra factions operating in the northern outskirts of Naples, a region where competing clans fought constantly for control of drug and extortion rackets. They called her a Micchiona, which translates to the big female kitten, though there was nothing gentle about the way she ran things. Prosecutors accused her of overseeing extortion rackets, counterfeit money trafficking, drug distribution, and weapons possession. She also built deeper ties with other Camorra networks, consolidating her power base while keeping a firm grip on the streets. In Naples, where the matriarchal tradition runs deeper than in most of Italy, a woman stepping into a clan leadership role raised fewer eyebrows than it might elsewhere. But Raffaella was not just a figurehead. She was running day-to-day operations and making the decisions that kept the clan profitable and feared. 3 years into her reign, rival gang members targeted her in a shooting. She survived the gunshot wounds and kept going. On the 26th of June 2012, Italian police carried out a massive dawn raid across Naples. Raffaella was arrested along with 66 other suspected members of her clan. Authorities also seized bars, supermarkets, sports cars, and frozen bank accounts tied to the operation. She was charged with Camorra association, extortion, illegal weapons possession, robbery, and drug dealing. The arrest was considered a significant blow to one of the most entrenched and resilient clans in the Naples suburbs. and it made international headlines as yet another example of women stepping into leadership roles within Italian organized crime. As the Bronx slowly began to rebuild in the 1980s, Loreen became part of the effort to restore neighborhoods that gangs and neglect had destroyed. She worked as a spiritual advisor, a mentor, and a community organizer. Her life became the subject of the 2022 Showtime documentary La Madrina, The Savage Life of Loreen Padilla, which uses archival footage and her own words to trace 5 decades of Bronx history through her eyes. She was never convicted of any major crimes, but her inclusion here is deliberate, because in the world of female gang leaders, Loreen represents the rare case of someone who walked away and used what she knew to rebuild rather than destroy. Zimin Chen.
Police! You are.
Between 2014 and 2017, a woman in China was running one of the largest investment fraud schemes ever uncovered, luring more than 128,000 people into a pyramid scheme that consumed their life savings and pensions. Her name was Zimin Chen, and when Chinese police started closing in, she fled the country on a moped to the Myanmar border. From there, she zigzagged across Southeast Asia using a forged passport under the alias Yadi Zhang. By September 2017, she had landed at London's Heathrow Airport. Once in Britain, she rented a luxury home near Hampstead Heath for over £17,000 a month and hired a personal assistant to help convert her cryptocurrency into cash and property. Her stolen funds had been stored in approximately 61,000 Bitcoin. She attempted to buy multi-million-pound properties in London and a villa in Tuscany. She even kept a diary with plans to become the Queen of Liberland, an unrecognized microstate on the Croatian-Serbian border, which she believed would grant her immunity from prosecution. Police got onto her trail when her assistant tried to purchase a £2.4 million London property. A raid uncovered hard drives loaded with Bitcoin, and she vanished the day before a scheduled interview in September 2020. In April 2024, she was arrested in York, England. Officers found a memory stick in a hidden pocket of her jogging pants containing the codes for £67 million worth of Bitcoin. She pleaded guilty at Southwark Crown Court, and in November 2025, she was sentenced to 11 years and 8 months. The seized Bitcoin, the largest cryptocurrency seizure in UK history, was worth over £5 billion at the time. Deborah Mason.
That's it.
From her home on Crayford Road in the Tufnell Park area of North London, 65-year-old Deborah Mason ran what police called one of the most sophisticated cocaine distribution networks they had ever seen, and she did it as a family business. Mason, who went by the nicknames Queen Bee and Gang. As the Bronx slowly began to rebuild in the 1980s, Loreen became part of the effort to restore neighborhoods that gangs and neglect had destroyed. She worked as a spiritual advisor, a mentor, and a community organizer. Her life became the subject of the 2022 Showtime documentary La Madrina, The Savage Life of Loreen Padilla, which uses archival footage and her own words to trace 5 decades of Bronx history through her eyes. She was never convicted of any major crimes, but her inclusion here is deliberate, because in the world of female gang leaders, Loreen represents the rare case of someone who walked away and used what she knew to rebuild rather than destroy. Zimin Chen.
Police! You are.
Between 2014 and 2017, a woman in China was running one of the largest investment fraud schemes ever uncovered, luring more than 128,000 people into a pyramid scheme that consumed their life savings and pensions. Her name was Zimin Chen, and when Chinese police started closing in, she fled the country on a moped to the Myanmar border. From there, she zigzagged across Southeast Asia using a forged passport under the alias Yadi Zhang. By September 2017, she had landed at London's Heathrow Airport. Once in Britain, she rented a luxury home near Hampstead Heath for over £17,000 a month and hired a personal assistant to help convert her cryptocurrency into cash and property. Her stolen funds had been stored in approximately 61,000 Bitcoin. She attempted to buy multi-million-pound properties in London and a villa in Tuscany. She even kept a diary with plans to become the Queen of Liberland, an unrecognized microstate on the Croatian-Serbian border, which she believed would grant her immunity from prosecution. Police got onto her trail when her assistant tried to purchase a £2.4 million London property. A raid uncovered hard drives loaded with Bitcoin, and she vanished the day before a scheduled interview in September 2020. In April 2024, she was arrested in York, England. Officers found a memory stick in a hidden pocket of her jogging pants containing the codes for £67 million worth of Bitcoin. She pleaded guilty at Southwark Crown Court, and in November 2025, she was sentenced to 11 years and 8 months. The seized Bitcoin, the largest cryptocurrency seizure in UK history, was worth over £5 billion at the time. Deborah Mason. From her home on Crayford Road in the Tufnell Park area of North London, 65-year-old Deborah Mason ran what police called one of the most sophisticated cocaine distribution networks they had ever seen, and she did it as a family business. Mason, who went by the nicknames Queen Bee and Gangster Granny, recruited her own sister, 3 daughters, her son, and their partners to serve as couriers. Between April and November 2023, the operation moved nearly 1,000 kilograms of cocaine, with a wholesale value between £23 and £35 million and a street value of around £80 million, roughly $107 million. The drugs were imported through Harwich Port in Essex and driven by her couriers to cities across England, including Bradford, Leicester, Birmingham, Bristol, and Cardiff. Each courier was reportedly earning more than £1,000 a day. Mason used the profits to live lavishly. Among the items investigators flagged was a Gucci collar and leash worth over £400 that she purchased for her Bengal cat, Ghost. Metropolitan Police used extensive surveillance, call data analysis, and digital evidence to build the case. They found thousands of messages between family members, along with a significant pattern of deleting communications, which prosecutors argued proved they all knew exactly what they were doing. Mason was found guilty of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs at Woolwich Crown Court on the 28th of April 2025. On the 18th of July 2025, the judge sentenced her to 20 years in prison. Her 7 associates, including 6 women and 1 man, received sentences ranging from 10 to 15 years. Karen Julieth Ojeda Rodriguez. She was 22 years old, and police in Colombia described her as one of the most dangerous individuals operating in the Santander region. Karen Julieth Ojeda Rodriguez, known as La Muñeca, the doll, was accused of being the second in command of a feared gang called Los de la M, which controlled drug trafficking routes across Colombia's northern territory and was known for distributing videos of rival gang member executions on the dark web. According to local news outlet Diario del Norte, she had entered the criminal world at 18 and quickly rose through the ranks. Investigators said she was responsible for coordinating targeted assassinations across the city of Barrancabermeja, where more than 120 killings took place in 2024 alone. She reportedly had a reputation for her precision with firearms. Her most high-profile alleged crime was the murder of her ex-boyfriend, Davy Jesus Garcia Palomino, a man known by the alias Orejas. In July 2024, she allegedly arranged a meeting with him under the pretense of settling a financial dispute, and once he arrived at a rural location, 2 men on a motorcycle shot him dead in a drive-by ambush. On the 1st of December 2024, police arrested her in Barrancabermeja, along with 2 accomplices, 24-year-old Paula Valentina Joya Rueda, who went by the alias Gorda Sicaria, or Fat Hitwoman, and a man identified only as Leopoldo. She was found in possession of a 9mm handgun and a revolver, and ballistic tests were being conducted to determine if the weapons had been used in other homicides. Police Lieutenant Colonel Mauricio Herrera described the arrests as important results in combating the wave of killings plaguing the region. Emma Coronel Aispuro. She was a teenage beauty queen when she married the most powerful drug lord in the world. Emma Coronel Aispuro became the wife of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman in 2007, and from that point on, her life became inseparable from the Sinaloa cartel. Prosecutors in the United States said Coronel was not just a bystander. She conspired with cartel members to distribute cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana for import into the US. and she played a direct role in one of the most audacious prison escapes in Mexican history. In July 2015, El Chapo escaped from the Altiplano maximum security prison through a mile-long tunnel. Coronel helped plan it, and prosecutors said she smuggled a GPS watch to her husband hidden inside a food item so engineers could pinpoint his exact location for the dig. After El Chapo was recaptured and extradited to the United States in 2017, Coronel continued to move freely between Mexico and the US. She attended nearly every day of his 3-month trial in Brooklyn, sometimes smiling at him, sometimes blowing kisses, and occasionally bringing their twin daughters so they could see their father. On the 22nd of February 2021, she was arrested at Dulles International Airport outside Washington, D.C. In June 2021, she pleaded guilty to all charges. At her sentencing on the 30th of November 2021, she spoke through an interpreter and asked the court for forgiveness. She told the judge she wanted to teach her daughters right from wrong. The judge acknowledged that she had been a teenager when she entered El Chapo's world and sentenced her to 3 years. She served less than 2 years and was released in September 2023 from a halfway house in Long Beach, California. Thelma Wright.
1986. In the heat of the summer, one of the hottest on record.
In Philadelphia during the 1980s, the cocaine and heroin trade was booming, and one woman held a position of power that very few females had ever reached in the American drug world. Her name was Thelma Wright, and the streets knew her as the Queen of Philly. She had grown up in a stable, 2-parent Catholic household in South Philadelphia. Nothing about her childhood pointed toward what she would become. But in 1977, in her early 20s, she met Jackie Wright, a major heroin wholesaler with connections to the Black Mafia. They had a son together in 1982, and for a while, life was comfortable. Then in August 1986, Jackie was found dead with a gunshot wound to the head, his body rolled up in a rug. Thelma was left with a child, a lifestyle she had become accustomed to, and a choice. She took over the business. At the height of her operation, she was transporting massive quantities of cocaine and heroin between Los Angeles and Philadelphia, pulling in an estimated $400,000 a month. She ran a coast-to-coast pipeline and became one of the few women to dominate a major U.S. drug market independently. But in the summer of 1991, 3 things happened in quick succession. A close friend was killed in a shootout, an associate was arrested and sent to prison, and a month later, her supplier was executed by a rival gang. Thelma walked away from the drug game entirely and never came back. She was never charged for her role in the operation. She went on to publish a memoir, With Eyes from Both Sides, and founded the Thelma Wright Foundation to mentor at-risk teens and incarcerated women. Antonella Marchant. In Chile, the Marchant name carries weight, and none of it is good. Antonella Marchant led the Los Marchant clan, a powerful drug trafficking organization based out of the José María Caro public housing complex in Lo Espejo, a commune in southern Santiago. Her operation was exposed by the Chilean Investigative Police, the PDI. In late 2021, when they seized approximately 380 kilograms of drugs, valued at around 5.8 billion Chilean pesos, as the shipment was being transported from the north of the country. When the case went to court in 2023, both her father, Francisco Antonio Marchant Iglesias, and her older brother Ricardo tried to take the fall for her. Her father insisted he was the focal point of the operation and said he never wanted his family involved, but the judiciary did not buy it. The court explicitly ruled that the leadership of the gang rested primarily with Antonella, not her father, not her brother. It was a direct rejection of the assumption that a young woman could not possibly be running things. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Her father also received 15 years, and her brother received 12. CNN featured her case in their April 2026 report on cartel women across Latin America. Even behind bars, Antonella has made headlines. She has been transferred between multiple prisons across Chile due to being classified as a dangerous and destabilizing presence. Reports indicate she has been sanctioned for riñas, possession of cell phones, and using other inmates to carry out illicit activities from inside. María Guadalupe Fernández Valencia.
La Policía Federal de México capturó en el estado de Sinaloa a Guadalupe Fernández Valencia, apodada como La Patrona.
According to U.S. prosecutors, Maria Guadalupe Fernandez Valencia was the highest-ranking woman ever indicted alongside El Chapo. Born in 1960 inches Aguililla, Michoacán, she had started out working in factories and began dealing drugs after becoming pregnant. By the 1990s, she had moved to California, where she was arrested for street-level drug dealing in 1998 and served time in federal prison. She was deported to Mexico after her release in 2007. Once back in Mexico, she moved to Culiacán and began working with her brother to import cocaine into the United States for the Sinaloa cartel. After her brother was arrested in 2010, she paused for a while but eventually resumed trafficking and expanded her role dramatically. By the time she was at her peak, she was the lieutenant to Jesus Alfredo Guzman Salazar, one of El Chapo's sons known as Alfredillo. Prosecutors described her as overseeing the entire drug distribution process from supply to delivery. In 2013, she was indicted in Chicago alongside El Chapo himself. She was arrested in Culiacán in February 2016, just a month after El Chapo's final capture. She was extradited to Chicago in November 2017. In 2019, she pleaded guilty to drug trafficking and money laundering charges. At her sentencing in August 2021, she spoke to the judge and expressed regret. She was sentenced to 10 years, but due to time served and what prosecutors described as substantial cooperation, she was released in 2023. Alice Marie Johnson.
Living a life she says she never could have imagined.
This is the story that proved the system can sometimes course correct, even if it takes 21 years. Alice Marie Johnson was a former FedEx employee in Memphis, Tennessee. She was married with children, and by all accounts, she had a normal life until everything fell apart. She went through a divorce, financial ruin, and then her son was murdered. In the early 1990s, she became a coordinator in a large-scale cocaine trafficking and money laundering operation. She was not the kingpin. She was not handling the drugs directly, but under federal conspiracy law, she was held responsible for the entire scope of the operation. In 1996, she was convicted on 8 federal counts, including conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute cocaine and money laundering. It was her first criminal offense. The judge sentenced her to life in prison plus 25 years, without the possibility of parole. She spent over 2 decades behind bars at the Federal Correctional Institution in Aliceville, Alabama. During that time, she wrote plays, became an ordained minister, and was considered a model prisoner. Then, in 2018, Kim Kardashian West learned about her case through a viral video and took it directly to the White House. She met with President Trump in the Oval Office, and Jared Kushner helped move the case forward as part of his broader criminal justice reform agenda. On the 6th of June 2018, President Trump commuted Johnson's sentence. She walked out of prison at 63 years old after serving 21 years, 7 months, and 6 days. In August 2020, Trump granted her a full presidential pardon. She has since founded the Taking Action for Good Foundation and in February 2025 was appointed as the administration's first ever pardon czar.